So, good morning, everyone. This morning, I Am Woman Hour is going to be looking at that amazing topic called NLP in business. So, for those of you who don't know what NLP is, it's neuro linguistic programming. And we're going to be introducing you some really exciting tips, tricks, and hacks. Karen Brown is co presenting with me, who's an amazing lady who's packing up her house. She's not a crazy woman living in a place that's piled high with boxes. She is actually packing up her house to move. So she's graciously allowed us to zoom into her chaos. But perhaps that's part of NLP as well. That's really big chunk. Anyway, good morning, as I say, and welcome. For those of you watching this on record, you're going to be in, you can get really excited to learn lots of tips and tricks this morning. So yes, so we're going to be just kicking off. So I'm going to introduce Karen to you, who's just started training in NLP. I'm a sort of hardliner NLP. I've been doing it for about 30 odd years. And I went all the way through to masters and train the trainer, and I love it. I absolutely love it, but it almost becomes instinctual when it comes to using NLP. So I'm going to introduce you to Karen, who's just going to give us a couple of minutes now, Karen, on what you've done so far in NLP, because you've just started the journey. And then I'd like to dip in with the audience for us to know who's online this morning and what's their experience of NLP. And if you can keep it short, because we've got lots of tips. So only 1 minute introduction on your experience of NLP. Karen's got 2. So over to you, Karen. What's your experience? Karen, have you gone on mute? Yeah, you've gone on mute.
I put myself on mute just in case the dogs decided to go off, because that is a possibility, as you well know.
So over to you, Karen, your experience, 2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes. Well, I think I've heard of NLP a long, long time ago, and I actually do have Dilts's original book in my library, which was quite surprising. My goal of becoming an NLP practitioner started in 2017, got parked along the way with everything else that was going on in the background. But I decided this year it was one of the goals I was going to achieve. So I signed up to do the NLP practitioner, and I did that in February. And I have literally just this last week completed the NLP master practitioner. And it was quite a journey because it opened an awful lot of doors sort of mentally. So one of the things we did last week was we had a breakthrough day. And it was like a colonic irrigation for the brain, you know? It was a massive clear out. It was crazy. So there was things like letting go of fear and anger and sadness and guilt, and all the stuff around it. But I realized that my imagination is absolutely amazing, because the stuff it was coming up from, I don't know where it was coming from, but oh my goodness, I had this vision of this little leprechaun on my timeline, just sweeping up stuff and laying sort of diamonds of forgiveness for the future, that I allow myself to forgive myself for what happens going on, that I don't feel guilty, that sadness is okay in its own way because we do need it, but sometimes you do stuff that is unwarranted, unjustified, and you basically beat yourself up, and it's ridiculous. Your mind is this warren of stuff that you can either allow positive or negative stuff into, but you actually get to choose. And knowing that you can choose, it's like the red pill and the blue pill. Knowing that you have that choice makes such a difference. So I've really enjoyed sort of my time doing the course. I'm glad I did it. I'm still doing the RTC course with Marissa. But yeah, this journey, this last 6 months has been absolutely amazing.
Fantastic. So I'm going to dip in with everyone now for us to gauge where other people are at when it comes to NLP, because we might have some other NLP masters online here this morning. So I'd love to know what your experience of NLP is. So start with you, Tony, because you were first in this morning. So what's your experience of NLP? Oh, you're on mute. Everyone's on mute, so you're going to have to come off mute. Right, okay. Lisa Reese is not on mute, so I'm going to come to Lisa Reese. So Lisa, what's your experience of NLP?
I'm an NLP practitioner and coach, so I've got like timeline therapy, hypnosis, all those sorts of things. I done it years ago. I don't really use it. I done it for my own personal benefit type thing. But yeah, I like it. I've done stuff on my kids, like my daughter for a driving test and like for confidence stuff. And then my other daughter, when she had to have a presentation and she was getting like failing every presentation, and we done, I can't even remember what one, this was years ago, and then she passed with an A and stuff like that. So I know it's stuff that works. And I've got all the books there in my office, but I don't do anything with it. So it's nice to have a bit of a refresh. And I do millions of NLP websites.
Wonderful, thank you. So coming to you, Lynn, what's your experience of NLP?
Sorry. I trained as a practitioner about 20 odd years ago, but never really finished it. I took away parts of that and I use parts of that in the work that I do right now. I've recently signed up to redo my practitioner and the coach part of it, and then maybe go on to the masters. So I'm going to do that in September. So I'm really looking forward to rebooting all of that stuff, because what I do know is that it does work. I've had it myself and I know that that works, and I've worked with other people and I know that's worked. So yeah, so I'm all in.
Fantastic. So I'm going to come back to you now, Tony, and I'm coming to Heather next. So Tony, what's your experience of NLP? Have you trained in it?
Yeah, so in 2017, when I divorced my husband, I got personal development and I went to a few Tony Robbins events, and I crewed for him for a couple of years and decided that I wanted to train with it. So a friend of mine had worked with a guy in Nottinghamshire. So it was November 2022. I trained with David Shepherd. I did the timeline therapy and the hypnotherapy. I've never charge for my services. I do it with the children, obviously. It's helped me massively learn how to kind of put things into perspective of what happened over the last couple of years, to forgive myself. It's just kind of a set of tools that I use with family and friends and myself mainly. Yeah, and I am considering doing the masters. So yeah, it's been phenomenal for me. It's something that I'm really interested in, but so is the whole area.
Right, okay, thank you. And coming to Heather. So over to you, Heather. What's your experience of NLP?
So I'm just learned about it from meeting yourself and lovely people in I Am Woman, and I'm writing blogs for you, as you know, with case studies. So my experience is purely from an observational point of view.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Over to you, Kim. So what's your experience of NLP?
Yeah, I did NLP for about a year. I don't know, it must have been 15, 20 years ago. It was quite a long time ago. But then sort of went in towards sort of more energy psychology techniques instead, with energy EFT, energy emotion, supermind, star matrix. So kind of just went on a different path. But so I know how powerful it is, if you like, but I probably wouldn't say I use the techniques very specifically or recently, because I use different things basically.
Okay.
It's a very good tool to have in the toolkit.
Yes, great. So thank you, Kim. And over to you, Mandy. What's your experience? Because I know you've worked, in a large insurance brokers and a lot who invested a lot in training. So what's your experience of NLP?
Good morning, ladies. Well, my experience of NLP actually started after I left Admiral, Cheryl, because I had done sort of business coaching at Admiral. I'd gone down the ILM route. So the first thing I did before I launched my business was book myself in for NLP practitioner to increase my credentials to work as a coach in my coaching and training business. Truthfully, my business has gone more down the training and mentoring direction. So I haven't used the NLP coaching for clients as much as I intended to, because I spent a lot of money on the course. But personally, it took me through the start of a transformation that I will probably need to pick back up on. But for example, I had quite a crippling phobia removed, something that may sound silly. I had a terror of moths. Bit weird that my logo is a butterfly. But seriously, if my husband was away and there was a moth in the house, I would lock it in a room and not use that room. You know, I have jumped off ladders to get away from moths, ladies. I was, you know, seriously, it was crazy. And got to the point where a moth flew off a light in my porch into my face, where I was able to gently brush it away without having a heart attack. So that was my NLP positive moment. I feel that if I find the right practitioner or master to help me, there are some things that I still need to let go of. You know, confident businesswoman that I am, like most of us, I've got some skeletons in the cupboard that I'd like to shake out. And I've become more aware of that as I've parented a teenager who pushes some of my buttons, should we say.
Right, lovely. Thank you for sharing. And NLP is one of those tools you can combine with other things. And I find it really powerful combined with hypnosis and using the RTT and starting off with timeline and then move into hypnosis. Super powerful. I've worked with Lynn on it and it's just staggering the results you can get. So I've got a presentation. So I'm going to do a share screen and then I'm going to pop into it. And there we go. I'm going to present. Present. Oh gosh, here we go. What have I done? So I'm going to present. Present. Here we go. So this is a slide for you to start thinking about any kind of experience that you have to get started and really understanding just the volume of things that go on. So you have a primary experience here, and then you start making deletions, distortions, and generalizations. And these are based on your meta programs. So that's the programs you run. And then you start making sense of it at a surface level, and then it goes into deep structure, and that's based on your life script. And I always show this slide at the beginning of a presentation. It looks a bit fuzzy, so I do apologize for that. Especially courses when you're doing managing difficult people, because I always say to people, the difficult person is to your right and to your left. And then you realize you're everyone's difficult person yourself, because we all see the world very differently. And the first thing I ask people to do is to look around the room and say, for example, remember everything that's grey. And they all start looking around the room thinking, I bet I'm going to remember the most amount of grey things in the room. And then I say, okay, now tell me what's yellow. Yeah. And that's a great example. They've sorted on grey and then they just can't see the yellow. And that's what it's like if you have a certain meta program that sorts on one thing and somebody else is sorting on another, you just realize just how difficult it is, because there are some things you just don't see. And you can clearly understand how some people get into arguments with one another because what they think is obvious that happened, somebody else just couldn't see it. So it's a great starter slide for us to understand just how different we are and how we see the world very differently. So, NLP, this is an old slide, but you can use NLP in so many things. Today, we're going to look at selling skills. So really understanding how NLP impacts on sales. But because, it's recognizing you are the work, and then recognizing, gosh, if I am the work, I've really got to get a handle on my communication and how I'm doing stuff. So this is what NLP stands for. The N is neuro, so it's this, neuro programming that goes on in the head. So these meta programs that you're running in the head, these are neuro programs that you're running. And the linguistic part is the verbal and non-verbal language, by how you're influenced and how you're using it. So it's so important for you to understand what you're running in your head and the language you're using, because the issue is other people notice it. Not only you're using it and other people notice it. So if you're running on really a lot of negative stuff that in your head, your language will almost like catch you out, because you'll be using negative language and people will hear it. The programming part is how you put all that together, because there's lots and lots of programs I'm going to start introducing you to, for you to really understand, oh no, I'm doing this, I didn't realize I was doing that, and other people are doing this, and I'm coming across this way where really I thought I was wanting to come across another way. So we're going to quickly go into some programs. So the meta programs is really interesting, because so just as genes are to genetics, so we understand genes and genetics, meta programs are to memetics, which is all to do with behavior. So it's really important you understand what your meta programs are. There are hundreds of meta programs, but it's almost like, well, understanding how you sort. So say, for example, somebody would say to me, oh, I'm very visual, yeah? It's got to be visual for me. And other people will say, oh, I'm not visual at all. What I really need to do is to sit by somebody and then show me how to do it. And then some people will say, just leave me to it, just give me a book, and I want to work my way through information or flowcharts. And they're giving you a clue of a meta program sorting they're doing. And it's really good for you to understand yours and understand the person you want to influence, and it's developing this flexibility that you can work with visuals, you can work with experiences, and you can work with giving digital information. So let me give you a case in point. I was working in Caledon Bowser teaching people on the production line how to pack, and I was training the trainers how they need to train people to pack. And so it's really good as well for you to work out, if you're working with a particular sector, what their preferences are. So working with people on a production line, they were very touchy-feely. They wanted the experiential way of learning. They weren't going to read a flowchart. We called it, the technique on a production line would be sitting by Nelly, yeah, in order to learn something. And it couldn't be opposite sitting by Nelly. It had to be side by side sitting by Nelly, so the person could see how this action worked. And it wasn't only see it, it was the whole experience of it, because packing those beautiful boxes needed to be, oh, well, I hold the box against my tummy and I feel a certain kind of pressure when it's like that. And then I see, you look at the box and there's 5 spaces. And so you pick them up, you line them up in front of you, and you're picking them up and packing the box. Can you see now how I'm doing it? You do it at the same time. So it's all sitting by Nelly stuff. So it's really important to understand almost like the best technique as well when you're training anyone on anything, and work out what's going to be best for them, that they get it quickly. Okay, so it's good to understand your meta programs. So I'm not going to go into DNA. I'm going to go into these understanding these memes around. So as I said, we also have these value memes. So within memetics as well is to do with, what's of value to you, that's going to drive you and your communications, because you're probably communicating a particular way that's all to do with your values. So it's good for you to understand, okay, what are my values compared with the person I'm training, because they sure as eggs going to be different. So I'm going to go into some programs because I want you to go away with some chunks of information you can put into work straight away, especially when it comes to sales and selling. So this first one is understanding, are you a big chunk or a small chunk person? Okay. And when you meet somebody who is of a different program, you're going to know it straight away, because you're going to feel you're in conflict, and you'll feel anger coming up. And so there are people who see things the big chunk way, and there are people who go into the detail of things. And detail people don't get on with big chunk people, and big chunk people don't get on with small chunk people, because so the small chunk people look at the big chunk people and say they're mad. They're just mad. And big chunk people look at small chunk people and say, gosh, they're so negative. They just can't see the bigger picture and move on. So I'd like you to start thinking and noting down some of these programs that work for you. Are you a big chunk person, or are you a small chunk person, or are you in the middle and you're common sense? Yeah. So I'll give you a little case study. So I was working with a group of women in Women's Aid, and we were working on their meta programs to find out what they were and who they got along with. So I set them a project of putting them into 3 groups. One had to think of how to build a building for women and children. Small chunk, detail, all the detail. One group were in the middle, common sense, and the other group were big chunk, thinking the most creative way of doing this, seeing the bigger picture. Yeah. So off they went, and they came back. Okay, so the big chunk people decided this building was going to be glass, it's going to be filled with water, and the mothers and children would come and swim, and they'd have a competition every day as to who could fart the most and create the most bubbles, and there'd be a reader in the water that measured all the bubbles. Yeah. So that's the big chunk people. Small chunk people, they didn't have a vision, but all they did was spend all their time arguing with the big chunk people as to what a stupid idea this was. Yeah. And so you can imagine they came back and all they did was argue. Big chunk people saying, yeah, it's going to be fun, it's going to be amazing, it's so innovative. Small chunk people say, we'd never get the budget for it, we'd never get planning permission for it. Da, 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 da. Nothing got moved forward. And you think to yourself, well, what about the common sense people? Why didn't they speak? They were just in amazement that this had happened. So they were completely disregarded. And so what would happen next in a big corporate would that the big chunk idea would keep moving forwards, and the small chunk people would still be arguing about the legislation, the law, everything you could think of, budgets. But I could tell you now, the big chunk stupid idea will probably get pushed forward because they're the ones with the energy. So it's starting to think about yourself, where are you? Can you do big chunk? If you are small chunk, can you almost like step into the big picture, or will you keep biting away small chunk? Or are you somebody who's very common sense, but never speak up because you think, well, it's obvious, but you get totally disregarded or sideswiped. So it'd be good for you to know which one you are. Okay. For me, I've got to do big chunk, and then I'll go into the detail. I very rarely start at small chunk. Usually I've got a big vision and I'll chunk it down. So work out which one you are, what can you do best, and what you really struggle with. Okay, so that's big chunk and small chunk. Associated and disassociated. So this is more to do with your timeline. And it's to do with if you can be totally attached with something, or are you completely dissociated? And your timeline will give you some clues which one you are. Okay, so when it comes to time, you have a line that runs either in front of you or runs from the back of you to the front. And this will give you a clue as to if you're associated or disassociated from your time. So I'll ask you a question, okay? So I'll say, okay, what did you do last Christmas? And then work out, where did that feeling come from related to the time for last Christmas? Was it out there in front of you? Or did this information come from behind your head? If it comes from behind your head, it's giving you a clue that your timeline is running through your body, and so you will be associated. Yeah. And if the timeline is in front of you, running from right to left or left to right, you are dissociated. Dissociated people can manage time better because they see what they're doing out there in front of them, running from right to left or left to right, okay? Associated people have more challenges when it comes to time, because the timeline is running through their body and they are totally associated with what they're doing, okay? So be really good for you to work out which one you are. So say, for example, I'm totally associated. So if somebody pushes me to do something fast, I will stop in my tracks and I won't do anything. So I just freeze in associated. Somebody dissociated would just do it faster. Okay, so, and it's good to work out if you're married to somebody, which one they are, because usually you marry your opposites. And if you're in a business, which one are you? Because again, usually you're working with your opposites because you're trying to bring something to the table that's really balanced. So start thinking about, okay, which one are you? So if you're working, let me give you an illustration. So when I was working with this guy, he was disassociated, I was associated. And so he went on holidays and we need to catch up on a project. He came to the office, it was raining, and my office was in the driveway. At the time, I had double doors open. So he turned up with his car, kept the car engine running, windscreen wipers going. He said, "You got 5 things you want to talk to me about." And I'd say, "Come in, Howard, we need to talk about this." He said, "No, I know. As soon as you go in there, you're going to say, I'm going to put the kettle on, and you're going to be asking me about my holidays. And really, all I want to do is deal with these 5 things." And you could see him doing it, deal with the 5 things. It was out there in his timeline in front of him. He wanted to deal with them, get them done and go, yeah? With me, it's all about, I'm totally associated with the person, the project, you know, but I'd want to know about the person. I'd say, "Come in, Howard, sit down now. Have you had a nice holiday? Do you want to show me your photographs? Do you want a cup of tea? What's gone on?" And so associated people are far more people orientated. Dissociated people are far more process orientated. Again, it's good for you to work out because they need different types of meetings. Disassociated people only need half an hour. Associated people need an hour, yeah? Or longer, yeah? So say, for example, when I'm working with associated people, they'll forget I've got a meeting with them. So I've got to remind them. They'll want to know if you've got, 1 hour plus, are you bringing the donuts or are they getting them? And have you got time to walk a production line or something, or read something with them? They're totally connected to you as a person, okay? Dissociated people, different. Half an hour is all they need for the meeting. They want to crack on and go through the points. And if you arrive late with the disassociated people, you're offending them, yeah? Associated people, as I said, won't even remember you're coming anyway. And if you come in, I hope you got a long time, because they're going to want to do quite a lot of stuff with you on the day. So it's good for you to work out which one you are, and also work out, can you spot the other person, and can you shift quickly to do the other type, yeah? So moving on to the next one, are you towards or away from? Okay, towards people usually in sales, away from people are usually involved in finance. And again, these two can get into one hell of a mess with one another. Towards people look at finance as negative. Finance look at towards people as though they're on drugs, yeah? And why don't they just come down to earth, yeah? So it's really good for you to work that out. Okay, are you a matcher or a mismatcher? I'm a mismatcher. So it's really good for you to work out which one you are. Match people are women, yeah, where they would say, "Oh, I love your hair, you look really lovely today," oh, and saying all the nice things to one another, yeah. Mismatchers are usually guys or women who work either in coaching or finance, where really they're looking for the errors, not the matches. Again, if you get this wrong, it's at your peril. Yeah. So if I'm working, and again, you need to read other people and see which one they are. So I was working with this one guy and he was a total mismatcher. So I knew when I greeted him, I had to say, "Oh, hi, Rob, you ugly bugger. God, you've put on weight again." And you think to yourself, if you said that to a woman, you'd have a slap. Yeah. With Rob, that's the only way he would almost like warm to you. That's the way he did things. So it's really good to work out which one you are. So matching people are looking for similar things. Mismatchers are looking for the different things. So teenagers are mismatchers. We've all worked with teenagers. So if you say, oh, don't go up to your room now, your tea's ready. They'll say, I've got to get changed. Da, da, da. You know they're going to mismatch you. So if you mismatch them, yeah, then you're going to get what you want. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day, you getting what you want. So if you say to them, so say, for example, they're wearing the most disgusting clothes and you're trying to get them to stop wearing them, you actually say, I really like those clothes, those trousers. I think, where did you get them from? I think I'll get a pair myself. They're not going to wear them. Yeah, they're not going to have their mother wearing the same trousers as them, or even liking their choice and buying it and wearing it, or even threaten them with that. And when it comes to food, you'd say to them, your food's not ready yet, so you might as well go upstairs and change. They'll sit by the table and say, well, I'm starving. Yeah. So you'll feed them a mismatch. So you feed a mismatches in order to get into agreement. Again, look at the past, present, and future, and look at which one are you. Are you living your life, in the past? Are you living your life in the present? Or are you living your life in the future? I'm always future pacing, always future pacing. But then realized, it was yesterday, I was in the car knowing I was doing this. I was thinking, the real meaningful things you do them all in the present. You go to the gym in the present. You meet people and build relationships in the present. There's so many things you do in the present, yet we spend so much time in the past of future pacing things. So that really got me thinking yesterday. Again, working out, how are you going to do future pacing if you're living in the past? How can you live more in the present in order to enjoy yourself more? You're enjoying yourself in the present, not in the past or in the future. And then looking at internal referencing or external referencing. Are you only doing things to keep other people happy? So are you doing all the external referencing as opposed to internal referencing? So when you get to the end of the week, have you actually done what you wanted to do or done what everyone else wanted you to do? When you're choosing your value statement for your business, is it what other people want to hear, or is it really about you? So it's in business, it's getting more confidence. You're doing more internal referencing than external referencing. Otherwise, you'll build a business that's about everyone else and not about yourself. So it's really important you work out again, internal and external. So you can imagine when you're running courses for managing difficult people, it's wonderful because before tea break, the clues that, what makes managing difficult people training courses successful is to just before tea break, just get everyone kicking off with one another. And they don't know why they're all arguing with one another, but really we've put them with their opposites and they're all wanting to kill one another before tea break, which is really good. And they come back after tea break thinking, what did they just do with us? We don't understand. We wanted to kill one another. But really, it's just that they can't get on with their opposites. So the next technique, before I take any questions here, is looking at the eye movement. So the eyes, they say, tell the world everything, and so they do. So eye elicitation is a wonderful technique, especially if you're interviewing anyone, because you can really understand what's going on in somebody's eyes. So, so where you are now, if you close your eyes, just to get a sense of where your eyes go when you start looking for information. So if I said to you, how many windows have you got to the back of your house? You will notice your eyes, even with your eyes closed, are wanting to go up and to your left. Okay, you are recalling visuals. Yeah, get a sense of that? So when you ask somebody a question, where were you, what did you do last night? Based on where their eyes go, you can work out, are they recalling or are they creating this? Are they making this up as they go along? Or are they actually recalling it? So when you're interviewing somebody, you can say to them, can you tell me, take me through a situation where you've dealt successfully with blah, blah, blah. and then see how much fibbing they do. Yeah, are they recalling or making it up? Okay, and then the same with the audio stuff. Yeah, if you work it out for yourself now, if I said to you, what does your telephone sound like? Your eyes are going to go to your left ear because it's going to be recalling the sound. If I said, imagine yourself singing to soprano, you're going to go to your right ear. Yeah. So you can get that sense of where you're going. And then when you go down on the floor, yeah. So remember, the right side is create. Your right side is create, creating a visual, creating a sound. And down on the floor, you're talking to yourself. And the other side, you're actually recalling experiences. So it's really good to almost like, don't put your marriage on the line for it, yeah? But it's great to really tonight watch your partner's eyes and see where they're going and see when they move from creating to actually recalling. And I can remember working with the Wales Sports Council, and there was this really famous rugby player who said, okay, let me do this eye thing with you then. I'm going to tell you about a try I scored, and took me through. And I said, I know you've embellished the truth, because I could see him going from left to right, left to right, left to right. So somebody was embellishing the truth. And when I worked in the university, when I was sussing out if people had really thought through their business idea, again, I'd be watching the eyes. How much have they worked this through? How much are they thinking on their feet? How, you know, just I could see the eyes going back and forth, whether they were creating and recalling, creating, recalling. And I would never start even in the investment process until somebody really thought through their idea and they were doing recalling more than creating. So it's great for you to know how other people are reading you. I don't know how far we can go in this this morning. I'm going to come off share. Perhaps I'll leave it on the I one. So I don't know if you want to take a screenshot of that, because it's really interesting to work out what's what. And everyone done a screenshot on that? Yes, Mandy?
Sure, I hope you don't mind me asking a quick question. I remember when we got to this I bit in my prac course, that there were occasions, some people, where it's the other way round.
Only if they, it's only the other way around if they are left-handed, but it's be very rare. So it's very rare it's the other way around. So the easiest way is to set somebody up a question where you know the answer.
Ah, okay.
So set up the question, usually on a recall, where you know it's got to be a recall. Yeah, like where do you live? Yeah, yeah, is the motorway near you? Yeah, they're going to be recalling. So again, you can test somebody with questions and then think, all right, I can see now they're creating. And it's okay to create if you're creating, but when you want somebody to evidence something to you and they're creating, then you're in trouble. And so lots of people use this if you're going for interviews. A lot of interviewers would be using this. If the police would be trained on this, any kind of anyone who's making judgment on questioning, they'd be using this technique. And probably you're using yourself intuitively without even thinking about it. Yeah. Are there any other questions on the eyes? No, I'm going to go to the screen before that in case you wanted to take a screenshot of that one. And then I'll come off share and I'll take general questions. So, so say, for example, if you're involved in selling, it's really important you understand that you need to take somebody into the sale by a big chunk. So that's why it's so important you understand people's problems, who your customers are, in order to take them through big chunk and then be prepared to go small chunk. And also have the skill, if you're working with somebody who just wants to go into the detail, you might be so far down the process with people talking about a project, and then you get into the finance and they bring a finance person in front of you. If you haven't gone into the small chunk on the detail of the finances, they're going to get frustrated with you. And as I said, it's usually the big chunk and the small chunk people usually are the decision makers in organizations. Usually the MD is going to be big chunk, and the second in command in finance is going to be a small chunk person. So it's working out, how flexible can you be working between these? And do you really think through projects before you start working with people? There's also working out as well, if you are visual, or if you're, again, interested in linguistics, the detail. So again, which one are you? And working out, okay, how flexible can I be working here? Because the majority of the people, so again, looking at this associated and disassociated people, the majority of people out there in the world are associated, not disassociated. So again, can you write in associated language? Are you building relationships? So associated people are more relationship marketing as opposed to online selling. So it's really working through, okay, how flexible can I be if the world in general is going to be, it's going to get to a sale faster through relationships rather than digital information. How am I doing this relationship building? So I got a question from Sangeeta. So Sangeeta, what was your question?
Hi everyone. Hi Cheryl. My question was, when you were explaining big chunks, small chunks, and for on this slide, I am able to do both.
Yeah.
So I don't know, how does that work?
That's great. A lot of people can't do both.
Okay. Because sometimes I have the bigger vision and then I say, okay, now I have to take small steps, and I can be associated and be very connected to people. But when I know when I need to do the work, then I can chop and, get things done. But
Great. That's great. And what
Okay.
you're showing there is flexibility. And that's what it's all about. We should be able to go up and down here as
Okay.
opposed to being stuck. So say, for example, I had to be very careful when I was doing business coaching. I didn't go too in heavy on the mismatch. And I can remember one guy, I rung him and I said, "Oh, David." I said, "Where are you?" Because I could hear noise around him. I said, "I thought you'd be home by now." "No, I'm in the car park in the university." I said, "Why are you in the car park in the university?" He said, "Well, I was so upset." He said, "You just froze me this morning. You absolutely froze me. I've been in tears in my car," because he said, "You actually ripped my business plan apart." Yeah. I thought I was being really useful. Yeah. I thought I was being really useful, finding out all the errors in his finances, finding out things that don't work. Yeah. Right. So for me, I've got to be really mindful, because I think I'm being useful, ripping something totally apart into shreds. I think to myself, that's what they've paid me for, haven't they, to find out how I feel it's not going to work. Yeah. So it's so important, as well, to think, hang on, if I'm going to completely, pull this business plan to shreds, I've also got to look at the matching side of it, the things they got right, and balance it. Yeah. So it is all about balance and knowing the person in front of you, because some people will see the value because they're mismatches too. They see the total value in pulling something to shreds. But if there's a matching element there, you've got to be so mindful that they might feel you're being totally negative and feel as though that you completely trashed them. Yeah, because they're a matcher. And I think one of the funniest stories on this, there was a lady, she was a very high lineage within an Asian family, and she was a mismatcher. Yeah. And we were going to her party in her home and didn't want to get the present wrong. And I'd been at her home where this box had arrived, and she kicked it across the floor and said, "Oh, what a boring present. It's in a square box." And I was thinking, oh, what are we going to do? So we actually went to a vegetable shop and bought the most massive turnip, yeah, and wrapped it in paper so it looked really interesting, because we knew she loved vegetables. She didn't eat meat. So this massive turnip and wrap it up. And I told my husband about it at the time, my late husband about it at the time, who was also a mismatcher because he was in finance. And as soon as she opened the door, he said, "Oh, so I'm not going to say her name. He said, you're far uglier than Cheryl described you to me." And he said, "And look what she had me to buy for you. So it looked interesting." I tell you what, she hugged him all night. She loved him. She ignored me. Yeah. She loved the mismatch. Yeah. She didn't like the match. So it's really important you understand, you know, which one is which. So yeah, so it's really important you work out how you do it, and
Yeah.
then work out, okay, where am I going to be challenged moving to, you know, in order then to get into a relationship with somebody else. So I'm going to come off stop share, and I'm going to take more questions. So what are the questions for you? Have you worked out who you are? Kim, over to you.
I just was interested about that mismatch one, and I wondered whether people can have a different persona for different reasons. So, for example, I feel sometimes me and my daughter mismatch, but I wouldn't say she's mismatched all of her time in her working career. So I wonder whether, you know, we have different personas for different relationships at times.
Well, because we've got about 200 meta programs, there's probably the other programs that are winding her up, that are running in the background about you.
Hmm.
So it could be something like, you're too much like me. So there could be that match within a mismatch, because she's seeing, it's almost like, you're too much like me and I want to be different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
quite possibly.
Yeah. And so it's quite interesting to start taking apart these meta programs and thinking, what am I really like to live with? What am I really like to work with? What am I really like to write? Yeah. What does my marketing material look like? Yeah. Am I able to bring in the reader with a big chunk opener, which is what people will need? And have I then got the knowledge, the discipline, and the insight to know I've got to go into some detail on some elements of this that I'm talking about? So, and when it comes to your own business, you know, are you seeing the big picture of your market as well as the detail part of it that you need to know about? And so a lot of people, when they're thinking of going into business, they'll think about, I want to be, say, for example, I'll just use hypnotherapy. I want to be a hypnotherapist, yeah? Oh, great. Do you know where your market is for hypnotherapy? Well, people who need hypnotherapy. All right. So what problems are you solving? Well, I'm solving a problem for people who are looking for hypnotherapists, yeah? And by this stage, I want to grab them by the hair and bang their head up against the wall physically. And I think to myself, are you crazy? And they'll even say, I've given up my job for this. I've given up my job and there's no work coming in. Oh, that's not surprising, is it? Yeah. So you think to yourself, wow, where do I start? And the first thing I have people to do, again, being a coach, yeah, you cannot physically grab people by the head and bang them against the wall, yeah? If they have a different meta program than you have to stand back and then think, okay, get into NLP headspace now and work out how I'm going to adjust my meta program to move into their space, and then start thinking about, okay, where do we start? So then I would give them an exercise to do. I'd do a PEST exercise for them to understand the market they're stepping into. So for them to understand, they might be a hypnotherapist, but hypnotherapy probably sits within the well-being space and mental health space, yeah? And then they get to realize, oh, there's a market. Here's my market. It's the well-being space and it's the mental health space. Okay, where does that market sit within the political agenda? Because that's where Mandy and I had a discussion about this the other day. You've got to follow the money. Where's the money? Yeah. And I said to Mandy, imagine you were a rugby player and you were on the pitch and you started chasing the person without the ball. It would look crazy. You're chasing a person on the pitch who hasn't got a ball, whereas the person's got the ball, has got the money, and that's the person you should be chasing. So it's working out, okay, where's the money? So say, for example, going into hypnotherapy, there's going to be a political agenda on well-being. There's going to be a political agenda on mental health. So anyone can go online and get the political agenda for Wales when it comes to mental health and well-being, because that's where the government are putting all the funding. So there's going to be people out there who have got their funding and who are ready to invest in a project. So I'd like to come to Lynn on this one. Lynn, you're more familiar with this, with working, you have a skill, but you are working with people who have funding they've got acquired from, it could be Welsh Assembly or wherever, and you're having to work within an agenda, a political agenda. So can you share that with us?
Yeah, I'm working with schools, and schools are really tight for money. So local authorities and schools, they actually don't have money. So I've had to go outside of that really and think sort of laterally. The school that I'm working with have actually put together a charity themselves, and they have been getting money in through a different route. And I am in the process of doing the same thing, so that actually I can look at where those agendas are sitting and where the money is, really, to follow the money, and do that. So it's a whole new thing for me, because I've always worked in places that have done that for me, and I kind of didn't really understand the process till I met Cheryl. and now I'm in it up to my neck.
So you have the money, yeah? So
With money, yeah.
yeah, and it's almost like working out where do I sit in this political agenda?
Yeah. It's,
What-
and it's really uncomfortable. I find money uncomfortable. So, that was, to begin with, that was really difficult to do. But people have money and they want to spend it. And I think if we can present to them in a way that fits their agenda, they're more than happy to work. That's my experience. They really want to bite your arm off because they've got money they've got to spend. And if you know what they need to spend it on and you can present it in that way, I guess that's the matching, is it?
Yeah.
And then that's how, they buy in really quickly.
So it's having this big picture of knowing what they want, but you've gone into the fine detail of knowing how they can work with you, and you know where the money is. Yeah. So it'd be the same for Lisa. So say, for example, there's loads of startup grants for people to have websites. So Lisa knows there's going to be a huge pool of people out there who are in startups and they can get funding for it. But imagine what it would be like if you'd had somebody to pay like 2 or 3 grand, they put on a loan, but they could have got a grant for it. But you don't know where the money is because you're chasing people who haven't got a ball. Yeah. Whereas really you should be chasing people with the ball. Yeah. They're running. They got the ball. You need to chase them. Yeah. They've got the money. There's no point in setting up in business, going out there to people who haven't got money. Yeah. They haven't got a ball for you to chase. And you know how ridiculous playing rugby would be if you're chasing people on the pitch. You haven't got a ball. Yeah. Can you imagine? It'd be chaos, really. I don't know what you call the game. You're just chasing people without a ball. So we've come to 5 to 12. And I'd love to know what you've got out of this morning. So could we do a little round robin on what you've got out of this very small whistle-stop tour of NLP? Karen, we haven't come to you yet. We're going to have to do this again. I thought we could do NLP in healing. There's this massive piece on healing. So yeah, but I'd like to know, what have you got out of this morning's session? How will you put it to work? Kim, can we come to you first?
Yeah, it's interesting to revisit this actually, because it's been such a long time ago that I looked at it in this context. So yeah, I've enjoyed today's call. So I will put my thinking cap on about it, because I do people psychology, but in a different way. It's a little bit like the DISC profile. It's called the colours of people, and how people sort of speak, verbalize, communicate. So I often ask a question on how do you best want to receive that information. I would ask someone if I was engaging them in a prospect scenario, or I might say something like, do you like an overview, or do you prefer more of the detail? So I can try and gauge what I'm sending to them is the right information for them. So it could be a video or an ebook or just a little piece of text. So yeah, so it is really interesting to look at it at a deeper level. Thank you.
And it's great just to people watch for a while and think, oh, they're doing that, they're doing that, doing that. And but remembering you are the work in NLP because you were the one who's got to know you. You were the one who's got to adapt you. You become far more aware of your almost like your gut instinct reactions. You've got to pull back and reread and sort of really make sense of before you would verbalize, because you're quite right, Kim. It's all about working out what do they need. Yeah. Forget about yourself. What do they need to get a result here?
I think you know in the end your business persona becomes a bit like a chameleon. So you have your own persona, which is where you're comfortable and how you should be in your own home environment. So you're not having to constantly burn energy off by wearing some sort of shield, some sort of persona that isn't who you are. But when you're working and you're dealing, particularly in sales and marketing, you become a bit more chameleon to work with different types of people, or if you're in a coaching scenario. But I think it's just a reminder that in our own space, we should be comfortable enough to be our own selves.
And it's remembering that sales environment.
Sourcing otherwise.
If somebody's Spanish, why are you talking Welsh? So it's learning, you have to speak somebody else's language sometimes, especially if you're training. Yeah. So coming to you, Sangeeta, what have you got out of this morning's session and how might you put it to work?
Well, it was all very new for me, apart from the timeline that you did with me, and that was very, very powerful. So I think I have taken some screenshots, and I was working out while you were going through it that, who I am and how can I work. And the last information, like you said, is about not just training, but seeing where the money is and how can you help people, but, people who can afford services or how to. So I'll be working on that more, thinking about how to approach my work and how to reach to people, for hypnotherapy or healing, but knowing how to. So I will dig a little more deeper in that. So that will help. But all the information was very, very interesting. My brain was going, I was working out, who am I?
Back to this particular hypnotherapist I was working with online. Bristol's a massive area with massive mental health issues.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of really connecting them with their audience in order to get work.
Sure. Thank you.
Over to you. What will you put to work this morning? Put to work from this morning.
Cheryl, I missed who you asked then.
Sorry, Mandy. Okay, then. Would you like to share what you did?
Thank you. I loved Kim's idea then about asking questions about how the clients want information presented. But I'm also thinking about family and friends and thinking about the other way round. So sometimes there's conflict in families, isn't there? Because you're upset about something and the person you're talking to is trying to offer you solutions or different options where all you really want them to do is give you a hug and say that must have been crap. So I've got a lot better at saying what I need and saying I don't need any answers or solutions. I need to get it off my chest,
That's a nice one. That's lovely. Thank you. Lisa, over to you. How will you put some of this to work?
I think for me, it was remembering, I remember when I done my NLP and it said about that I'm an away from person. And that really, I struggle setting goals because I can't work towards things. So it's thinking, I forgot all about it then. And it's like thinking of how I can use that to be able to hit the targets I want to. But I know that I'm not very good at working towards. I work away. But it also made me laugh at what you said about you give that man the breakdown and try to improve his money. I remember when I first started doing audits and I said to this woman, and it was very constructive criticism, I thought. And she was like, and she was making no money from her website. And I told her how to make money. But because I picked on some things, she was like, I don't like your website either. So that made me laugh because when you said that, it reminded me of that. So some people just don't want to hear how to make things better.
It's weird, isn't it? But you feel because of the roles we're all in, you want to make things better for people and to
Yeah.
highlight what's going on. But it's, you know, it's dressing it up in such a way of
Yeah.
person you're
I'm too honest. I'm like you, Cheryl.
fascinated, that guy, absolutely. But I thought it'd been really helpful, yeah. It's when people cry and fall to the floor, you know, you've gone a bit too far, really. Or they blow you up and say, I don't like you either. Over to you, Lynn. What have you enjoyed this morning? What will you put to work?
Did you say me? I missed a name as well. Yeah. Okay, well, for me, I've had a light bulb moment. My light bulb moment is I'm working with a friend on writing a course together, and we're getting nowhere fast. And when you said big chunk, little chunk, I was like, oh yeah, that's why I've got the big picture, and she's and need to like get that in place. And she wants to know what time we'll be having breaks when we run things, and we're not getting anywhere. We've tried several times to do this, and it's like a magnetic force pushing us away. We're not doing it. But as you were saying that, I'm like, that's why we're not doing it.
Yeah. It's really,
I'm not quite sure how to amend that yet, but that's the reason why it's not got anywhere.
and for those of you working with men doing what you do, men love NLP because suddenly it's almost like a scientific piece, yeah? It's almost like objective. It's a scientific, and they love it. It's almost like they said, a lot of feedback I've had, it's almost like as though they've taken these rose-colored spectacles off and they can just see the world for the first time. It's wonderful feedback. Over to you, Karen. And Karen, a session where you're looking at NLP perhaps from a healing perspective?
I think for me, what I'm going to be doing going forward is bringing everything together. So bringing the healing, bringing the hypnotherapy, bringing the timeline therapy, and just creating something sort of different. I've got several ideas, and I've got a sort of basic plan, but I just need to get through the next few weeks. So it's just a work in progress at the moment.
You know, and perhaps we all need to go away thinking, what's my biggest challenge? And perhaps how could NLP help? Just that it can help. Whether it's, you know, looking at, oh, I'm going to use it to really push myself forward and have techniques. Perhaps it's goal setting for go to sleep at night to help push me forward, or just people watch, or if I'm not getting on with the kids, I'm going to watch them and see what they're doing. And I would say never jump in with NLP, or sit back for a while and just watch what's going on and then with it. So thank you, ladies, for joining me online this morning. Looking a little bit more at NLP. As I said, don't jump in and start putting your marriage on the line, sort of using the eye elicitation. Take your time and just work with it. And great.
Thank you very much. Cheryl, I have a point. I have some certain experiences in my life. You know, when you were talking about, and Lisa was talking about being honest, and it's, you know, people are not taking kindly. And I always have a saying, you know, it's not what you say, it's how you say makes all the difference. So sometimes, yes, honesty is great, but it's about considering the other person's feeling and things like that. And sometimes that's difficult. But I have had experiences where people were very harsh. I was thinking there was no need for that. You could have said same things in a really nice way, you know, and then I'll be on board, kind of thing. So, you know, we all are different and we all take information differently. So, you know.
I always say everything nice, Sangeeta.
I'll have a meeting with you soon.
You'll know how nice I am.
But it's sometimes we are not ready to hear the truth as well.
Yeah.
You know, we are not in that space. So we are having that barrier, or ego hurts as well sometimes. And I have found that as well. And I had to work with that, you know. So, yeah.
Perspective,
Right.
we give people the solutions, and to know, for them to know we're part of the solution that can help them.
Yeah.
That goes a long way. So it's all going to be okay. I'll give you a hug. It'll be all right. We can work through this. We can do it.
Oh.
A great week, everyone. And I'm sure I'm going to catch up with you soon. And next Monday, I don't know what we're doing, but I'm sure we'll do something quite magnificent. See you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.